been a long time coming, but now Jensen and Eidos Montreal return with Deus Ex Mankind Divided. After my first contact look at the game last weekend before launch, here I'm going to delve deeper and explore the treats that the game offers, along with the technical delights on offer. So grab a coffee, sit down and enjoy as we augment our minds with Deus Ex. This new game is accompanied by a brand new engine, the Dawn engine, a derivative of the IO-powered Glacier 2 engine, which means it no longer uses the Crystal Tools engine or Foundation engine that powered the original game. Now, at first glance, you probably think that wasn't true, as it looks very similar, but this is the combination of updated models and dialogue scripting procedures seen throughout the multiple choice dialogue sections during the game. And this is one of the downsides of the same animation processes that we saw in the previous titles. Now, part of this will be down to the fact that the engine is designed around much simpler node AI construction, allowing the developers to change behaviour based on nodes rather than get the programmer involved all the time. This speeds up development and iteration, allowing the developers to choose how behaviour happens, and because of this, then animation will be linked to the preset choices they make and therefore dynamically used throughout play. This means you see the same animation from characters in the game and also the same animation loops running through conversations, which can look a little stifled, almost reminiscent of a Thunderbirds episode.
Thunderbirds are go!
Now, this may come across a little harsh, and it's not my intention, and it's certainly not to say the game is badly animated. I understand the time it would have taken to create all these preset animations throughout play, and that's simply not possible with the size of game this is and the dynamic construction of the conversations that can happen. But I can't help but feel it would have been time well spent to create a bigger repertoire of animation sets and also blend them more naturally between each other, giving a much more organic nature in action as each character moves and talks to you, and also allowing less repetition as you play. The reasonably stiff and rigid facial movement and mouth sync is the biggest offender here, mind. This is best observed when you travel between hubs, much slower on the Xbox One than the PS4. Ironically, coming in a few seconds longer to load on the Xbox One gives you longer time to see the fact there's only really 3 or 4 randomized sets here. A little nitpicky some may say, but it would have delivered a much higher polish on what is already a very beautiful and well delivered title. Now, much of this comes down to the game's adoption of physically based rendering, which is a huge leap over the previous titles. You don't need me to analyse that. We've now lost the urine filter with the team's pure hair and pure materials methods in use here. This gives everything a much softer and more diffused look across metals, wood and floors, using a combination of screen space reflections and cube maps. The whole game looks very organic and natural. It's not fully realised across the board, with skin being its biggest weakness, with varying levels of accuracy throughout the game, but some are better than others. The material shaders in the game, specifically in the close-up sections, are very well realised and look good on characters' clothing, hair, which pure hair itself deserves a special mention. The technique here is an enhancement of Tress Effect, or Tress Effects 3.0, covering a broad range of techniques with a textured head as a base, and then simple billboard or fins to add to the hair quality, and then on top of this the individual splines or strands are managed from a master and slave construction, which is then run within a compute shader to handle the complete simulation of movement and animation, and along with its LOD system can then be used in various levels of the gameplay and cutscenes, moving up to LOD 0 with the best quality. They all support varying levels of translucency and self-shadowing, and with the light attenuation and specular and Fresnel calculation all look very convincing throughout gameplay and even more so in the cutscenes, even though the most impressive sections all do seem to come from the pre-rendered sections which the game is heavily using. With it covering both hair and beards in the game along with fur in other titles, it is an impressive feature and I hope it grows in use, as it is a welcome addition to any title. It's just a shame that, like others, not every character supports the same quality in use here. But in gameplay you can see the movement and hair does look very natural from the third person view. Ultimately, it is a killer feature, with Jensen's hair product equally up to the task at hand. And that task involves choice, and that's again the expansion of this game with much bigger hubs and areas to play. With hardly any loading screens now, you can play as you want: stealth, action, attack, or if you want to hold back and just sneak through every area, that's your choice. And this expands on that from the original game with much bigger areas and a single hub to travel from. Again, the only loading screen you'll tend to see is the animated one from the train section. Everything else, bar the black screen of assassinations, just runs smoothly through play. And on both consoles, it's a very clean display. As I already covered, the resolution is lower on the Xbox One, but they both support a temporal anti-aliasing solution that helps soften the image and also improve the quality as you play with an additional sharpening filter. And I believe in the MSAA element, but I'll have to double check that in more detail when I look at the PC version to see if that is true. Now, some may not like the view of the image, but I'm very much a fan. Now, the Xbox One version does suffer slightly more than the PS4 version, due to the high levels of shader speckler which don't appear to be picked up all the time by the temporal AA, and also the pure hair can create some noise and artifacting, which is slightly worse on the Xbox One due to the lower resolution, and some slight pixel pop across all versions is still evident. But I feel most will find the image quality quite clean no matter which version you pick it up on. Now, the screen space reflection techniques in the game can be different or varying resolution, with earlier sections more scripted, seeming with much higher quality and less dithering, with other sections using far more dithering and a lower resolution, which can stand out slightly. But the abundance of these throughout the game and the work that they put on the GPU is understandable. Now, performance, as I covered before, is pretty solid across both versions, but there are points where the game can tear and dip with its adaptive VSync. Now, comparing the Xbox One S to the original Xbox One, we get a slightly better version. Now, both versions have been tested here, patched to 1.02. There's not a huge change from the day one disc. You still get tearing, you still get dips, but most of these happen in this heavier GPU sections that is completely scripted as you walk through the city. The other parts of the game that do suffer are the open city areas. As you're walking, you do get sector points of loading, which can cause small amounts of dips and tearing very randomly as you play. These don't appear to be consistent throughout the game, and sometimes it'll do the same on the PS4 and not on the Xbox One, and vice versa. And this is just something that happens occasionally, seeing dips down to 23 and 25 very briefly as it stutters and holds and loads in sections. Now, this is not a massive annoyance, as most of the time you breeze through these sections straight into the next, but I mentioned for clarity. But outside, you do get the best view of the game and all of the visual features it has to offer. The PBR materials of the brickwork and the stone buildings, and obviously the global illumination and volumetric lighting does look very impressive, even in such a dystopian city as this. Parallax occlusion mapping is used across the game in various sections, adding far more depth and detail to the cobbled streets, and it looks great on both platforms, with the entire game really looking a match for the high settings on PC, but I'll cover that in more detail so long as the request is there for me to cover this game more on the PC release. There are other highlights to the engine and the game. One of the definite strong points is the superb sound design, and again, Michael McCann delivers on the soundtrack. Screen space ambient occlusion is used throughout the game, giving everything a solidity within the world, and unfortunately a heavy use of pre-rendered cinematics. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of these, they are hidden very well, and aside the huge drop in quality and the additional effects and post-processing that appears, much better depth of field and bokeh, but you do get that during gameplay along with the film grain effect. You would be hard pushed to spot where these jump in and out. They're very well hidden and stream in some of the loading sequences earlier on in the game. As it stands, I've been very impressed with the visual delivery here and the overall package. I'm a little disappointed though that the game does feel a little rough around the edges, and the ending does feel as if they didn't really get time to deliver what they wanted, but that again may be subjective. As a massive fan of the Deus Ex universe, I really hope that the team get a chance to add some additional DLC and maybe give us a much better ending, because I never asked for this. Anyway, that's my time up on my analysis of Deus Ex. If you do want more on this title, please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this or anything else that I've put together, then please subscribe to support the channel, as it really helps me and improve my content and also the ability to continue my work. And remember, in the future, stay away from gas parties. I'll see you on the next one.
So let's strap you in, get the gas going, and then, well, then I just need to sort of dive in. Feel my way around.
Alright, let's just get this over with.
Relax, Jensen.
Not underneath! What? Oh!